Her heartbeat matched a Hell Angels biker. One day, she felt the other. Heartbeat stop. A quiet paramedic thought she was just saving a dying biker on a dark highway, until she felt a second heartbeat thundering inside her chest. Not hers. His. From that moment on, every breath he took, every pain he felt, echoed inside her body like a living curse. But just when she starts to understand this strange bond, everything shatters. Because the biker isn't just running from his past. Something else is hunting him. Something not human. Something that won't stop until it drags him into the dark for good. And one morning, she feels his heartbeat vanish inside her, and the world goes silent. How far will she go to bring him back, when saving him might cost her own life? Drop a comment below and share which part of the world you're tuning in from today. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe for more. The night wrapped around Athena Rowan like a heavy blanket as she guided her car through the rain-slicked streets. Her windshield wipers worked overtime, pushing away sheets of water that seemed determined to blind her. The red and blue emergency lights had long since faded behind her, but their ghostly reflections still danced in her mind. Her hands trembled slightly on the steering wheel as she replayed the events of the last few hours. The crash scene had been chaos when she arrived, twisted metal and leather scattered across the wet asphalt, the acrid smell of gasoline mixing with rain. But it was the man, Ray's Callahan, who dominated her thoughts. She could still feel the rough texture of his leather vest under her palms as she had performed CPR. The Hell Angels patch, partially obscured by rain and road grime, had been impossible to miss. Even in the harsh glare of emergency lights, his face had been striking, all sharp angles and old scars framed by dark hair plastered to his forehead. "Get it together," Athena muttered to herself, adjusting her rearview mirror. Years of emergency response had taught her to compartmentalize, but something about this call felt different. That moment when warmth had surged through her chest, unlike anything she'd experienced before, it defied explanation. And the second heartbeat? She pressed her hand to her sternum, feeling only her own steady pulse. The memory of his eyes snapping open made her shiver. In that split second when his fingers had wrapped around her wrist, she'd seen recognition in his gaze. But that was impossible. They'd never met before. Athena turned onto her street, the familiar sight of her small bungalow offering little comfort. The eastern sky was beginning to lighten, turning the low-hanging clouds a dusky purple. Her neighbor's cat watched from beneath a bush as she hurried through the rain to her front door. Inside, Athena went through her post-shift routine on autopilot. She hung her rain-soaked jacket by the door, kicked off her boots, and padded to the kitchen. The coffee maker's digital display blinked 3:15 in the morning. Her shift report was filed, her equipment restocked. There was nothing left but to try and sleep. In her bathroom, Athena stared at her reflection. Dark circles shadowed her green eyes, and her brown hair was falling out of its practical braid. She looked exactly like someone who'd just worked a 12-hour shift ending in a major trauma call. Normal. Ordinary. Everything about her was ordinary. So why did she feel like something fundamental had shifted? She went through her bedtime routine mechanically. Brush teeth, wash face, change into soft pajamas. Her bedroom was cool and quiet, the rain creating a gentle patter against the windows. Athena crawled under her covers, pulling them up to her chin like a shield against the strange events of the night. "It was just adrenaline," she whispered to her dark ceiling. "That's all it was. The human body does weird things under stress." She closed her eyes, willing sleep to come. Her body felt heavy with exhaustion, her mind finally starting to quiet. Just as she was drifting off, it happened again. Thump, thump. Athena's eyes flew open. The second heartbeat was back, strong and steady alongside her own racing pulse. She pressed her hand to her chest, then her neck, counting the beats. There was her normal heartbeat, and there, just slightly offset, was another. Completely distinct, completely foreign. She sat up, switching on her bedside lamp. The warm light did nothing to dispel the strangeness of the moment. The second heartbeat continued, unhurried and powerful, like it had every right to be there, like it belonged. "This isn't possible," Athena said aloud, her voice shaking. "This can't be happening." But it was happening. She could feel it, as real as her own pulse, as real as the rain still falling outside. Something had happened on that dark highway. Something had changed when she'd fought to save Ray's Callahan's life. Athena hugged her knees to her chest, listening to the double rhythm within her. Her medical training offered no explanation for this. Everything she knew about human anatomy insisted this was impossible. Yet here she was, sitting in her quiet bedroom at sunrise, with two distinct heartbeats echoing in her chest. She thought again of Ray's eyes when they'd opened, that flash of recognition, that moment of connection. Had he felt it too? Did he know what had happened? The questions tumbled through her mind, keeping sleep at bay despite her exhaustion. The rain continued to fall, marking time with the strange new rhythm of her double heartbeat. Athena knew she should be more frightened, should be rushing to the emergency room or calling someone for help. But beneath her confusion and disbelief, there was something else, a peculiar sense of rightness she couldn't explain. She lay back down, pulling her blanket close. The second heartbeat maintained its steady pace, neither speeding up nor slowing down. It felt strong, vital, and somehow, inexplicably, like it was meant to be there. As the first rays of dawn began to peek through her curtains, Athena finally drifted into an uneasy sleep, the dual rhythm of two hearts beating in her chest, following her into her dreams. Sunlight streamed through Athena's bedroom window when she finally opened her eyes. She blinked at her alarm clock, 12:30 in the afternoon. She never slept this late, but the events of last night had left her drained in ways she couldn't explain. For one blissful moment, everything felt normal. Then she lay still, and there it was. The second heartbeat, steady and strong alongside her own. Athena pressed her palm against her chest, counting the beats just like she had in the dark hours of early morning. Both rhythms were there, clear as day. "This isn't happening," she whispered, but the words felt hollow. The extra heartbeat continued, unconcerned by her denial. Her phone buzzed with a text from work. Her shift started in 2 hours. Athena considered calling in sick, but the thought of sitting alone with this strange situation seemed worse than keeping busy. Besides, she was a medical professional. If anyone could handle an inexplicable physical symptom rationally, it should be her. In the shower, the drumming water drowned out the double rhythm. But as she dried her hair and got dressed in her navy blue paramedic uniform, the second heartbeat made itself known again. Athena found herself moving constantly, brushing her teeth longer than necessary, reorganizing her medical bag. Anything to avoid sitting still and feeling that echo in her chest. The drive to work was a blur of anxiety. What if her coworkers noticed something was wrong? What if this affected her ability to do her job? The questions chased each other through her mind as she pulled into the staff parking lot at St. Michael's Hospital. Inside, the emergency department hummed with its usual controlled chaos. Athena nodded to the nurses at the station, trying to act natural as she stowed her things in her locker. The familiar antiseptic smell and fluorescent lighting should have been comforting, but today everything felt slightly off-kilter. "Hey, Rowan," called Mark, one of the senior paramedics. "Heard you had some excitement last night with that motorcycle crash." Athena's own heart stuttered, but the second one maintained its steady pace. "Yeah," she managed. "Pretty intense. That Hell Angel made it, I hear. Good save." She mumbled thanks and hurried to check her equipment, afraid her face might give something away. The next few hours passed in a carefully maintained blur of routine tasks. Athena threw herself into every minor emergency that came through the doors, grateful for any distraction from the persistent rhythm in her chest. Around 7 in the evening, she finally had to take a break. Sitting alone in the break room, the second heartbeat seemed louder than ever. Athena closed her eyes, trying to steady her nerves. She was a trained medical professional. She dealt with crisis situations every day. She could handle this. The thought had barely formed when the steady rhythm suddenly spiked. The foreign heartbeat raced wildly, sending waves of unexpected adrenaline through her body. Athena gasped, stumbling to her feet. She grabbed for the counter to steady herself, but her hands were shaking so badly that she knocked over a tray of medical supplies. Bandages and gauze scattered across the floor. "Athena, you okay in there?" someone called from the hallway. "Fine," she managed, dropping to her knees to gather the fallen supplies. "Just clumsy." The racing heartbeat continued, making it hard to focus. What was happening? Was this how it would be now, subject to someone else's physical responses? The thought terrified her. She had just finished cleaning up when Sarah, one of the ER nurses, appeared in the doorway. "Athena, there's someone asking for you at the front desk. Says he needs to talk to you specifically." The second heartbeat pounded harder, as if it knew something she didn't. Athena forced herself to walk normally to the waiting room, but she knew who it would be before she turned the corner. Ray's Callahan sat in one of the plastic chairs, his massive frame making the furniture look like children's toys. Despite the bruises visible on his face and arms, he carried himself with contained power. His dark eyes found her immediately. "Athena Rowan," he said, his voice low and certain. It wasn't a question. She took an involuntary step backward. "How do you know my name?" He stood slowly, favoring his left leg. "Because I can feel your heartbeat right here." He pressed a hand to his chest, exactly where she felt the extra rhythm in her own. "And I'm betting you can feel mine too." The fluorescent lights seemed too bright suddenly, the waiting room too small. "I don't know what you're talking about," Athena said, but her voice shook. "Yes, you do." He took a step toward her. "Something happened last night when you saved me. Something old, something that's been waiting for centuries to wake up." Athena shook her head, panic rising in her throat. This couldn't be happening. She couldn't process this. Without conscious thought, she turned and ran, pushing through the staff door and down the back hallway. She heard him call after her, but she didn't stop. She burst out the rear entrance into the evening air, grateful she'd parked in the back lot. Her hands trembled so badly she could barely get her key in the ignition. As she pulled out of the parking lot, she caught a glimpse of Ray's in her rearview mirror, watching her drive away. The 15-minute drive home passed in a blur. Athena's own heart was racing, but that other heartbeat, his heartbeat, had settled back into its steady rhythm, as if trying to calm her down. She parked in her driveway, ran to her front door, and locked it behind her. In the silence of her home, Athena leaned against the wall and pressed a trembling hand to her chest. The double rhythm continued, unchanged by her panic, unmoved by her denial. What had he meant about something ancient awakening? How could this be real? She slid down to sit on the floor, her legs no longer able to hold her up, feeling the steady thump-thump that wasn't hers echo through her ribs. Everything she knew about medicine, about the human body, about reality itself seemed suddenly uncertain. And somewhere out there, a stranger could feel her heartbeat just as clearly as she felt his. Athena lay in bed the next morning, watching sunlight creep across her ceiling. She hadn't slept much. The foreign heartbeat had become her constant companion, steady and strong beside her own. After calling in sick to work, she wrapped herself in a blanket on the couch, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. Her phone buzzed several times, concerned messages from co-workers, but she couldn't bring herself to answer. How could she explain what was happening when she barely understood it herself? The morning stretched into afternoon. Athena had just made herself a cup of tea when a knock echoed through her apartment. She froze, knowing instantly who it was. The second heartbeat grew stronger, as if responding to its owner's proximity. Another knock, gentler this time. "Athena?" Ray's deep voice carried through the door. "I know you're there. I can feel you're there. I just want to talk." She pressed her hand against her chest, feeling both heartbeats thrum against her palm. He sounded different than he had in the ER. Calmer, almost tired. After a long moment, she walked to the door and opened it. Ray's stood in her hallway, looking worn but alert. The bruises from the accident had darkened, creating shadows across his face. He'd traded his leather vest for a plain black t-shirt that didn't quite hide his tattoos. "5 minutes," she said quietly. "That's all." He nodded, careful to maintain his distance as she let him inside. Her small living room seemed to shrink with his presence, but he moved with deliberate gentleness, choosing the chair furthest from where she stood. "Would you like some tea?" The words slipped out automatically, her grandmother's influence showing through even in crisis. A hint of surprise crossed his face. "Yeah, actually. Thanks." In the kitchen, Athena's hands shook slightly as she prepared a second cup. The familiar routine helped steady her nerves. When she returned, Ray's accepted the tea with a murmured thank you, his scarred hands dwarfing the delicate cup. "What's happening to us?" Athena asked, settling on the couch with her own tea. "The truth, please." Ray's took a deep breath. "It's called a soul bond, an ancient thing, from when my family still lived in Ireland." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "The Callahan men, we carry a curse, has done for generations, but it only wakes up under specific circumstances." "What circumstances?" "When someone freely chooses to save our life, not because it's their job, but because their heart truly wants to help." His dark eyes met hers. "When you gave me CPR, you could have gone through the motions, done the minimum, but you didn't. You fought for me. You wanted me to live." Athena remembered that desperate moment on the road, the fierce determination she'd felt. "That's what triggered this? Because I wanted to save you?" "Because you wanted it enough to risk taking on part of my curse." He set down his tea. "The bond lets us feel each other's physical state. Pain, danger, severe emotions. We'll share them now. It's meant to be a protection in its way, a warning system." "That's impossible," Athena whispered, but even as she said it, she felt the truth of his words beating inside her chest. Ray's leaned forward. "Watch." He pressed his fingers hard against a bruise on his arm. A sharp ache bloomed in Athena's own arm, exactly 1 heartbeat later. She gasped, rubbing the spot though she knew there was no mark there. "I'm sorry," he said immediately, releasing the pressure. "I needed you to understand. This is real." The pain faded, but Athena's mind raced. "How long does it last?" "It's permanent." He said it gently, but the words hit her like a physical blow. "The bond can't be broken. Believe me, My family's tried everything over the centuries." Athena set her tea down before she could drop it, her hands trembling. "This can't be happening. I'm just a normal person. I'm not meant for curses and magic and—" "Hey," his voice softened. "You're handling this better than most would, and you're anything but normal. What you did that night, that kind of compassion, that's rare." She looked up at him, really looked at him for the first time. Beyond the intimidating exterior, she saw exhaustion in the lines of his face, worry in the set of his shoulders. He was as overwhelmed by this as she was. "There's something else you need to know," he continued, his expression growing serious. "Some of my former brothers think I betrayed them. They're wrong, but they're dangerous men who don't care about truth when they're angry. Anyone connected to me could be a target." "The Hell Angels?" Athena's voice shook slightly. "Ex-Hell Angels now, but yeah, I've been trying to leave that life behind, and some people took it personally." He stood carefully, wincing at what must have been sore muscles. "I'll do everything I can to keep you safe, but you needed to know the risk." Athena felt the sincerity in his words, just as she felt the steady rhythm of his heart alongside her own. Part of her wanted to panic, to run, to somehow undo the events that had led to this moment. But a deeper part recognized the truth that had been growing since that night on the highway. Something profound had changed, and there was no going back. Reyes moved toward the door. "I've given you a lot to process. I'll go, but—" He pulled a card from his pocket and set it on the table. "My number's on there. If you feel anything strange through the bond, or if you just need to talk, call me. Anytime." After he left, Athena sat alone on her sofa as the afternoon light faded to evening. She pressed her hand to her chest, feeling the double rhythm that now seemed less frightening and more like a reminder that she wasn't alone. The curse, the danger, the responsibility. It was overwhelming. Yet, as the sun set outside her window, she couldn't deny the truth beating steadily inside her, as real as her own heartbeat. Athena tried to lose herself in mundane tasks as night settled over her apartment. She wiped down counters that were already clean, organized drawers that didn't need organizing, anything to keep her hands busy and her mind off the steady thump-thump of the foreign heartbeat in her chest. "This is fine," she whispered to herself, folding the same dish towel for the third time. "Everything is completely normal." The extra heartbeat suddenly quickened, racing so fast it made her dizzy. She gripped the kitchen counter, trying to steady herself. Something was wrong. The rapid pounding wasn't from anxiety. This felt different, like danger. A sharp knock at her window made her jump. Athena spun around to see Reyes' face pressed against the glass, his expression urgent. Without thinking, she rushed to unlock it. "What are you?" "They found me," he gasped, climbing through. His leather jacket was torn, fresh scrapes on his hands. "2 of them. They've been tracking me since sunset." The sound of motorcycle engines growled in the parking lot below. Athena's own heart started racing to match the frantic rhythm she felt from Reyes. She peeked through the curtains to see 2 bulky figures dismounting their bikes, their faces hidden by helmets. "Those the ones who think you betrayed them?" she whispered. Reyes nodded grimly. "Stay inside. Lock the window behind me." "What? No, you can't go out there." But he was already climbing back through the window. Athena watched helplessly as he dropped to the ground and stepped into the yellow glow of the parking lot lights. The 2 men spotted him immediately. "Finally decided to stop running, traitor?" The larger one cracked his knuckles as they approached. "This isn't the way to handle this," Reyes said, his voice steady despite the tension Athena could feel coursing through him. "We can talk it out." "Talking's done." The first punch caught Reyes in the chest. Athena gasped as the impact echoed through her own body, a phantom blow that knocked the wind from her lungs. She pressed her hand to her sternum, feeling his pain as clearly as if she'd been hit herself. When the second man moved to join in, something snapped inside her. She couldn't just watch this happen. Without stopping to think it through, she darted out her apartment door and down the external stairs. "Hey!" she shouted, surprising herself with how steady her voice sounded. "I've already called the police. They're on their way right now." The men hesitated. Athena forced herself to stand taller, praying they couldn't see her trembling. "You're lying," the larger one growled, but she heard the uncertainty in his voice. "Sirens will be here any minute. Your choice if you want to explain to them what you're doing here." The two men exchanged looks. After what felt like hours but was probably only seconds, they backed away. "This isn't over," the larger one spat at Rays before they returned to their bikes. Athena held her ground until the sound of their engines faded into the distance. Then her legs started shaking so badly she nearly fell. Rays caught her arm, steadying her. "Inside," he muttered. "Quick, before they change their minds." They made it back to her apartment, where Rays immediately collapsed onto her couch. His breathing was ragged, and Athena could feel every stabbing pain in his ribs, as if they were her own injuries. "That was either very brave or very stupid," he said between wincing breaths. "Probably both." Athena went to get her first aid kit. "Hold still. I need to check your injuries." As she cleaned his cuts and checked for broken ribs, each touch sent ghost sensations through her own skin. It was disorienting, feeling both the caregiver and the patient at once. When she pressed an ice pack to his bruised chest, the cold seemed to seep into her own muscles. "You didn't have to help me," Rays said quietly. "Yes, I did." Athena secured the last bandage. "We're connected now, remember? I felt every hit they landed." "I'm sorry about that. About all of this." "Don't be." She surprised herself with how much she meant it. "I'm a paramedic. Helping people is what I do." Near midnight, with Rays' injuries tended as best she could manage, Athena gathered spare blankets for the couch. She couldn't send him back out there, not when those men might still be looking for him. Not when she could feel how much pain he was in. As she arranged the blankets, a sudden cold breeze swept through the apartment. The hair on the back of her neck stood up. The overhead lights flickered once, twice, then steadied. "Did you feel that?" she whispered. "Yeah." Rays sat up straighter, scanning the room. "Something's not right." The temperature seemed to drop further. Their shared heartbeat pounded heavily in the dark apartment, like a drum signaling approaching danger. But this felt different from the bikers. More ancient, more otherworldly. The lights flickered again. Athena retreated to her bedroom, but sleep felt impossible. She lay in bed, listening to the quiet sounds of Rays shifting on her couch through the open door. The cold lingered, and their shared heartbeat continued its uneasy rhythm. Something had changed tonight. Not just the bond between them, but something deeper. Something neither of them understood yet. In the darkness, Athena stared at her ceiling, feeling Rays' wakeful presence through their connection. Both of them lay there, watching the shadows and waiting for whatever might come next. The first rays of sunlight filtered through Athena's bedroom window, rousing her from a fitful sleep. The shared heartbeat in her chest thumped steadily, but something felt off. A restless energy that wasn't her own. She sat up, listening to the quiet sounds of movement from her kitchen. Following the noise, she found Rays pacing the small space between her counter and refrigerator. His shoulders were tense, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. He looked up when she entered, his expression haunted. "There's something I need to tell you," he said, his voice rough. "Something I should have mentioned yesterday." Athena's stomach tightened. "What is it?" Reyes ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "The curse. It's not just about the soul bond. There's someone else involved. Something else." "What do you mean?" "A collector. The death dealer, my grandmother called it." He stopped pacing, bracing his hands on her counter. "It's some kind of supernatural entity that follows the cursed ones, watches, waits, and if we can't figure out how to break this bond..." He swallowed hard. "It claims the soul-bound partner." The kitchen suddenly felt colder. Athena wrapped her arms around herself, remembering the strange presence they'd felt the night before. "Is that what was here last night?" "Probably." His jaw clenched. "I should go. The further I am from you, the safer you'll be." "No." The word came out sharper than Athena intended. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "No, you're staying here until we figure this out. We're connected now. I can feel everything you feel. Running away won't solve anything." Their shared heartbeat seemed to skip, and something flickered in Reyes' eyes. After a long moment, he nodded. "At least let me make breakfast," Athena said, moving toward the refrigerator. "We can talk more while we eat." She busied herself making eggs and toast, grateful for the familiar routine. As she worked, the tension gradually eased. By the time they sat down at her small kitchen table, the morning almost felt normal. "So," Athena said, pushing scrambled eggs around her plate, "how did you end up mixed up with those bikers who were after you?" Reyes stared into his coffee cup. "Made some bad choices when I was younger. Thought I'd found brotherhood with the Hell Angels, but ended up deeper than I meant to be. When I tried to leave..." He shrugged. "Some of them took it personally. And now? Now I fix bikes, try to keep my head down. Was doing okay until the accident." He looked up at her. "Until you saved me and triggered this whole mess. I'm sorry about that." "Don't be." Athena set her fork down. "Look, I've spent my whole life being shy, trying not to take up too much space. Sometimes I wonder if I'm making any real difference at all. But that night on the highway, I knew exactly what to do. That's the one thing I'm sure about." Their eyes met across the table, and Athena felt a surge of understanding flow through their connection. Neither of them had asked for this bond, but here they were. "I have to work this afternoon," she said. "You should come with me." "To the hospital? That's not a good idea. Better than leaving you alone with those guys still looking for you." She stood to clear the plates. "Besides, I can literally feel when you're in danger now. I wouldn't be able to focus anyway." Reyes looked like he wanted to argue, but eventually nodded. They spent the rest of the morning quietly coexisting in her apartment. Reyes reading an old motorcycle magazine he'd found, while Athena caught up on paperwork. It was strange how quickly his presence had started to feel natural. That afternoon, they drove to the hospital in Athena's car. She could tell Reyes was uncomfortable in the busy emergency room, but he found a quiet corner in the waiting area and stayed there. Throughout her shift, Athena found herself automatically checking their shared heartbeat, reassured by its steady rhythm. The sun was setting when they returned to her apartment. Athena reached for her keys, then froze. There on her front door, just above the handle, was a dark handprint that looked like it had been burned into the wood. "Reyes," she whispered. He stepped closer, examining the mark without touching it. "It's here," he said quietly. "The death dealer, marking its claim." A chill ran down Athena's spine. She unlocked the door with trembling fingers, but nothing seemed disturbed inside. Still, the apartment felt different now, marked, like they were being watched. Neither of them wanted to sleep after that. Athena curled up in her recliner while Reyes took up his position on the couch. They left the lights on, taking comfort in the shared sound of their breathing and the steady thrum of their connected heartbeats. "We'll figure this out," Athena said softly, fighting to keep her eyes open as exhaustion crept in. "Together," Reyes agreed, his quiet presence a reassuring anchor in the night. As Athena finally drifted off, she was aware of Reyes keeping watch, his vigilance wrapping around her like a protective blanket. Whatever was coming for them, at least they weren't facing it alone. The aroma of fresh coffee and something sweet pulled Athena from sleep. For a moment, she was disoriented, still curled up in her recliner from the night before. Then she remembered everything: Reyes, the curse, the burned handprint on her door. She found him in her small kitchen, carefully flipping pancakes on her electric griddle. The sight of the tall, scarred biker wielding a spatula with such concentration made her smile despite everything. "You didn't have to cook," she said, running a hand through her messy hair. "Seems fair after you let me crash here." He glanced over his shoulder. "Besides, I make decent pancakes. One of the few things I learned from my mom before." He trailed off, focusing on the griddle again. Athena felt the flutter of emotion through their connection, a mix of old grief and warmer memories. Without thinking, she touched his arm. "Thank you." They ate at the kitchen counter, the morning sun streaming through her windows. The pancakes were indeed good, light and fluffy with hints of vanilla. Their shared heartbeat felt calm, almost peaceful. "We need to understand more about this curse," Athena said, pushing her empty plate away. "You mentioned it was a family thing?" Reyes nodded, his expression thoughtful. "My great-aunt Margaret might know more. She's the keeper of all the old family stories, lives about an hour from here in Cedar Grove. Been years since I visited, but..." "Then that's where we start." Athena stood, suddenly energized. "Let me grab a quick shower, and we can head out." An hour later, they were in Athena's car, heading north on the highway. The day was bright and clear, making the events of the past few days feel almost dreamlike. But the steady double thrum in her chest reminded her it was all very real. "Tell me about your aunt," Athena said, glancing at Reyes in the passenger seat. "She's something else. Tough as nails, but kind too. Never married, spent her life collecting family histories and folk tales. Used to scare me and my cousins with ghost stories when we were kids." He smiled slightly. "Probably knows more about the curse than anyone alive." They turned off the highway onto smaller roads, eventually reaching a quiet neighborhood of older homes. Aunt Margaret's house was a Victorian painted soft yellow, with a wraparound porch and carefully tended flower beds. Before they could reach the door, it swung open. A small woman with silver hair and bright eyes stood there, wearing a flowered dress and a knowing expression. "About time you showed up," she said, looking between them. "I felt it the moment the bond awakened. Come in, both of you." Athena exchanged a startled look with Reyes as they followed Margaret inside. The house was filled with books, antiques, and the scent of herbs. The old woman led them to a sunny sitting room and gestured for them to sit. "So," Margaret said, settling into a worn armchair, "you've triggered the Callahan curse. Tea?" Without waiting for an answer, she poured 3 cups from a waiting pot. "It's been generations since it manifested this strongly. Usually it just shows up as hunches or dreams. But you two..." She studied them over her teacup. "You've got the full bond." "What exactly does that mean?" Athena asked. "Reyes told me some, but..." "It started with an ancestor of ours in Ireland," Margaret explained. "He betrayed someone who loved him purely, and her dying curse bound the Callahan men to those who would save them with an open heart." She fixed her gaze on Athena. "You chose to save him that night, didn't you? Without hesitation?" Athena nodded. It's my job. I'm a paramedic. No, Margaret shook her head. You did more than your job. You gave part of your own life force to save him. That's what triggered the bond. But what does it mean for us now? Reyes asked, leaning forward. Margaret's expression grew serious. The bond can go two ways. If you learn to trust it and each other, it can heal old wounds, both physical and spiritual. But if you fight it, try to pull apart. She made a breaking gesture with her hands. It can destroy you both. Athena felt Reyes' tension through their connection, matched by her own anxiety. And the death dealer? The thing that's following us? Ah, that. Margaret sighed. It's the curse's enforcer, making sure neither of you tries to cheat fate. It'll keep getting closer until you either resolve what's between you or... She didn't finish the sentence. They talked for another hour, Margaret sharing old family stories, and what little was known about breaking the curse. When they finally left, the sun was already dropping toward the horizon. The drive home was quieter, both of them processing everything they'd learned. About halfway back, Reyes broke the silence. We should work on protecting you, he said. I can teach you some basic self-defense, given what's coming. Athena nodded, grateful for the practical focus. That would help. Back at her apartment, Reyes cleared space in her living room and began showing her simple but effective moves. How to break a hold, where to strike to disable an attacker. Their shared heartbeat stayed steady as they practiced, almost like it was approving. The most important thing, Reyes said, demonstrating a defensive stance, is to trust your instincts. That goes for emotional threats, too. Stay centered, stay aware. As evening settled in, Athena found herself watching Reyes with new eyes. He moved with quiet confidence, but there was gentleness in how he corrected her form, how he made sure she felt secure with each new technique. She realized she did trust him, more than she'd expected to. They were preparing dinner when it happened. The heartbeat they shared suddenly shuddered, sending them both staggering. A cold wind seemed to sweep through the apartment, though all the windows were closed. It's getting closer, Reyes said grimly, steadying himself against the counter. Athena pressed a hand to her chest, feeling their shared rhythm gradually settling back to normal. What do we do? We take watches tonight. I'll take first shift. Try to get some sleep. They moved through the apartment, checking locks, drawing curtains. Reyes positioned himself near the door while Athena curled up on the couch with a blanket. Their shared heartbeat had steadied, but there was an undertone of tension now, like a drum beating in the distance. Wake me in 4 hours, Athena said, trying to sound braver than she felt. Reyes nodded, his expression watchful. Neither of them mentioned the growing certainty that something was out there, moving in the darkness, drawing ever closer to their door. Dawn broke over Athena's apartment complex, painting the sky in soft pinks and golds. She stood in her living room, shouldering a hastily packed backpack, while Reyes double-checked the windows and doors. Their shared heartbeat thrummed steady but alert, like a compass pointing them toward safety. Ready? Reyes asked, his voice gentle despite the urgency of their situation. Athena nodded, taking one last look at her home. It felt surreal, leaving everything behind, but the events of the past few days had changed everything. The supernatural force hunting them, combined with the threat from Reyes' former gang members, made staying put too dangerous. They slipped out through the back entrance, moving quickly to where Reyes had parked his motorcycle. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of approaching autumn. Athena watched as Reyes secured their bags, noting how his movements were both efficient and protective. Ever ridden before? He asked, holding out a spare helmet. She shook her head, accepting the helmet with slightly trembling hands. "First time for everything, right?" His lips quirked in what might have been a smile. "Hold on to me tight. We'll take it easy at first." The motorcycle rumbled to life beneath them, and Athena wrapped her arms around Reyes' waist. Through their connection, she felt his heartbeat quicken slightly at her touch, matching her own nervous excitement. As they pulled away from the curb, she found herself relaxing into the rhythm of the ride, trusting his skill and strength. They rode for several hours, staying off main highways and taking scenic back roads. The countryside opened up around them, rolling hills, scattered forests, and small towns that seemed frozen in time. During brief stops for gas and stretching, they began to talk more openly. At a quiet rest stop, sitting on a weathered picnic table, Reyes spoke of his past. "I've done things I'm not proud of," he admitted, staring at his calloused hands. "The gang became my family when I had nothing else, but the price was too high." Athena felt the weight of his regret through their connection. "We all have things we wish we could change," she said softly. "But maybe that's not what matters most. Maybe it's what we choose to do now that counts." He looked at her then, his eyes holding a vulnerability that touched her heart. "How do you do that?" "Do what?" "See hope in broken things, in broken people." She thought about it, watching leaves dance across the parking lot. "Maybe because I've always felt a little broken too, just in different ways. Being shy, always afraid to take up space in the world, it's its own kind of prison." Their shared heartbeat seemed to pulse with understanding, creating a moment of connection deeper than words. By noon, they stopped at a small roadside diner, its neon "open" sign buzzing cheerfully in the window. Inside, the air smelled of coffee and grilled onions, and an old jukebox played quietly in the corner. They slid into a booth by the window, where they could watch both the parking lot and the road. As they studied their menus, an elderly waitress approached with coffee pot in hand. "What'll it be, dears?" they ordered, a burger for Reyes, grilled cheese for Athena, and settled into a comfortable silence. Athena noticed how Reyes' shoulders gradually relaxed, his usual vigilance easing slightly in the peaceful atmosphere. When their food arrived, Athena caught something she hadn't seen before, a genuine smile spreading across Reyes' face as he thanked the waitress. It transformed his features, softening the hard lines and making him look younger, unburdened. Through their connection, she felt a warm flutter of joy, like sunshine breaking through clouds. "What?" he asked, catching her watching him. "Nothing," she smiled. "It's just nice to see you happy." The afternoon found them winding up mountain roads, the air growing cooler as they climbed. Pine trees stretched toward the sky on either side, and the motorcycle's engine echoed off rocky cliffs. Finally, they turned onto a narrow dirt road that led to a small cabin tucked into the woods. "My friend Marcus owns it," Reyes explained as they parked. "He only uses it during hunting season. We should be safe here for a few days." The cabin was simple, but welcoming. One main room with a stone fireplace, a small kitchen, and 2 bedrooms. While Reyes checked the perimeter and brought in firewood, Athena found herself drawn to the broad window seat overlooking the valley below. She pulled out her journal, something she hadn't touched since the night she first met Reyes. As the sun began its descent behind the mountains, she wrote, "I always thought courage meant not being afraid, but now I'm starting to understand it differently. When someone depends on you, fear doesn't go away. It just becomes less important than doing what needs to be done. Maybe that's what real strength is. Being afraid, but choosing to act anyway." The evening settled around them like a comfortable blanket. Reyes built a fire while Athena made tea, and they shared a simple dinner of canned soup and crackers. Outside, clouds gathered, and soon the gentle patter of rain began against the roof. As night deepened, Athena felt their shared heartbeat changing. Where before it had always felt like two separate rhythms existing side by side, now they began to synchronize, creating a single, soothing pulse. The sensation was both strange and deeply comforting, like finding harmony in a song she'd always known but never properly heard. Curled up in her borrowed bed, listening to the rain and the steady thrumming in her chest, Athena felt something she hadn't expected. Peace. Not just the absence of fear, but a positive presence, a sense that whatever came next, she wasn't facing it alone. The rain continued its gentle song on the roof, and Athena's eyes grew heavy. Their shared heartbeat remained steady and strong, a lullaby pulling her toward sleep. In those quiet moments between waking and dreaming, she held on to that feeling of peace, letting it carry her into restful darkness. Dawn painted the mountain sky in gentle brush strokes of pink and gold. Athena woke to the sound of metal clicking against metal outside the cabin. Following the noise, she found Reyes in the small tool shed, bent over an old motorcycle covered in dust and cobwebs. "Marcus won't mind," he said without looking up, somehow knowing she was there through their connection. "This beauty's been sitting here for years, just needs some love." Athena watched as his hands moved with practiced grace over the engine parts. There was something mesmerizing about seeing the usually guarded man so absorbed in his work, his face relaxed in concentration. "Want to learn?" he asked, gesturing her closer. She spent the next hour holding tools and listening as he explained each part's purpose. Their shared heartbeat thrummed steadily, creating a peaceful rhythm that matched the morning bird song. "There," he said finally, wiping his hands on a rag. "Want to test her out?" 20 minutes later, they were winding up a narrow mountain trail, the restored motorcycle purring beneath them. Athena's arms were wrapped around Reyes' waist, her chest pressed against his back where their twin heartbeats synchronized perfectly. The air grew crisper as they climbed, carrying the scent of pine and wild mint. They reached the lookout point just as the sun crested the eastern ridge. Reyes cut the engine, and they sat in comfortable silence, watching the golden light spill across the valley below. Morning mist clung to the treetops like cotton candy, slowly dissolving in the warming air. "I never thought I'd share something like this again," Reyes said quietly, his voice rough with emotion. "After everything I've done, I figured my life would always be about running and fighting." Athena squeezed his hand, feeling the echo of his pain through their connection. "Maybe sometimes we get second chances we don't expect." They rode back to the cabin as the morning warmed, stopping to gather wild blackberries along the way. In the kitchen, they worked side by side, turning their harvest into pancakes. Flour dusted their clothes, and Athena couldn't help laughing when Reyes managed to get batter in his beard. "You think that's funny?" he growled playfully, flicking water at her from the sink. Their shared heartbeat danced with joy, and Athena marveled at how natural it felt now. This rhythm that had once seemed so foreign. They spent the afternoon bringing the cabin back to life. Reyes fixed loose floorboards while Athena cleaned windows, letting sunshine pour through the newly clear glass. They worked together to sweep away cobwebs and dust, their movements falling into an easy pattern as if they'd done this 100 times before. "You know what this place needs?" Athena said, surveying their work. "Music." She found an old radio in a cabinet, and after some fiddling, soft, country music filled the cabin. To her surprise, Reyes knew the song, humming along as he organized tools. As evening approached, they sat on the cabin's small porch, watching the sun paint the clouds in brilliant oranges and purples. Their shared heartbeat had settled into a peaceful rhythm that felt as natural as breathing. "Athena," Reyes said softly, his eyes on the horizon. "I need to tell you something." She turned to look at him, struck by the vulnerability in his expression. "These past few days..." He paused, searching for words. "You've given me the first real hope I've had in years, not just because of what you did that night, saving my life, but because of who you are, how you see the world, how you believe in second chances." Their heartbeats swelled with emotion, and Athena felt tears prick at her corners of her eyes. "Everyone deserves hope, Reyes, even people who think they don't." They stayed on the porch until stars began appearing, sharing stories and comfortable silences. When they finally went inside, the cabin felt more like home than either had expected. The next morning, Athena woke before dawn, drawn to consciousness by an unfamiliar sensation. Something felt off, but she couldn't immediately identify what. She made her way to the kitchen, measuring coffee grounds into the filter by the dim light of approaching dawn. Then it hit her. The heartbeat. The steady rhythm that had become her constant companion was growing fainter, like a radio signal fading into static. Her hands began to shake as she pressed them against her chest, struggling to feel the familiar pulse. And then, nothing. Complete silence where that second heartbeat should be. "No," she whispered, already running toward the bedroom where Reyes slept. "No, no, no." She burst through the door to find him lying motionless on the bed. His skin was pale, with a gray tinge that made her medical training scream in alarm. When she touched his hand, it was ice cold. "Reyes!" She grabbed his shoulders, shaking him, but his head just lolled lifelessly to the side. Her fingers pressed against his neck, searching desperately for a pulse, finding nothing but cold, still flesh. The air in the room grew heavy, thick with an unnatural chill that made her breath fog. In the corner of her eye, a shadow began to take shape, darker than darkness itself, moving with terrible purpose. A voice like grinding stones filled the room, though it seemed to speak directly into her mind. "He is claimed." Athena's legs gave out beneath her, and she collapsed to her knees beside the bed. The world around her seemed to fade away, leaving nothing but silence, a silence so complete it felt like a physical weight pressing against her ears. Her own heartbeat thundered in her chest, alone for the first time in days, a solitary rhythm that felt wrong, broken, incomplete. She reached for Reyes' hand again, but even that small touch brought no comfort, only the terrible confirmation that the warmth and life she'd known were gone. The shadow loomed closer, and the silence grew deeper still, until even her own heartbeat seemed to fade away into the void. The world spun away into darkness. Athena felt herself falling, until consciousness slipped through her fingers like water. When her eyes fluttered open again, nothing made sense. A thick, pearly fog swirled around her ankles, neither warm nor cold. The ground beneath her feet felt solid, yet somehow uncertain, as if it might dissolve with her next step. Above, no sky existed, only more of the endless, shifting mist that seemed to breathe with a life of its own. Athena turned in a slow circle, trying to orient herself. Her watch still ticked, but the hands spun wildly, sometimes forward, sometimes backward. Time had no meaning here. Though she knew only seconds had passed since she found Reyes in the cabin, this place felt ancient, eternal. "Hello?" she called out, her voice muffled by the fog. The mist parted before her, creating a path that led to a massive tree unlike any she'd ever seen. Its trunk was pale as bone, its branches reaching up into the endless void like pleading fingers. And from those branches, Athena stepped closer, squinting. Things dripped from the limbs, not water or sap, but fragments of memory. She saw fleeting images. Reyes' smile at the diner, his hands fixing the motorcycle, the warmth in his eyes when he spoke of hope. Each memory fell like a tear, dissolving into the mist below. There, at the base of the tree, lay Reyes. His body was still, peaceful, as if in deep sleep. Athena rushed forward, dropping to her knees beside him. "You cannot wake him." The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, grinding like stone on stone. "Not yet." The death dealer materialized from the fog, its form constantly shifting, sometimes tall and gaunt, sometimes hunched and ancient, but always wrapped in shadows that seemed to drink in what little light existed. "Where are we?" Athena demanded, her hand finding Reyes'. His skin felt neither warm nor cold, as if suspended between states of being. "The between place," the death dealer answered, "where choices are made and fates are sealed." It moved closer, and Athena fought the urge to shrink away. "You have a decision before you, Athena Rowan. The soul bond offers two paths." The fog swirled more intensely, and Athena saw two shimmering doorways form in the air. One gleamed with morning light, promising life and freedom. The other pulsed with a deep, crimson glow that reminded her of a beating heart. "You may sever the bond," the death dealer continued. "Return to your life, untethered, free from this burden that was never meant to be yours." It gestured to the bright doorway. Or, its shadowy form turned to the crimson portal. "You may choose to call him back, but such a thing requires sacrifice. A portion of your own life force must be given freely, permanently, to restore his." Athena's breath caught in her throat. "How much of my life?" "That is not for you to know. It could be days. It could be decades." The death dealer's voice held no emotion. "Such is the price of defying death's natural order." Tears spilled down Athena's cheeks as she looked down at Reyes' still face. Above them, another memory fell from the pale tree. The moment she first felt his heartbeat join with hers, that initial spark of connection that had changed everything. "Please," she whispered, "I need time, just a little time." The death dealer inclined its head slightly. "Time flows differently here, but know this, when dawn breaks in your world, your choice must be made." Athena nodded, then turned her full attention to Reyes. She settled more comfortably beside him, still holding his hand, and began to speak softly. "Do you remember that first night in the rain?" she asked. "When I found you on that highway? I was so scared, not of you but of failing, of not being enough to save you. But then that warmth shot through me, and suddenly I wasn't alone anymore." She wiped away fresh tears with her free hand. "And that morning in my apartment, when you told me about the curse, I should have been terrified. But all I could see was how much pain you were in, how heavily guilt weighed on you. You thought you were beyond saving, but you still tried to protect me." Memory after memory dripped from the pale tree's branches as she spoke. The way he'd cooked breakfast to thank her. How he'd taught her to defend herself, patient and gentle despite his gruff exterior. The perfect piece of that sunrise they'd watched together. "You told me I gave you hope," she continued, her voice breaking. "But you gave me something too. You helped me find strength I never knew I had. Made me believe I could be more than just the shy girl who tries not to take up space." The fog swirled faster now, and Athena sensed dawn approaching in the world above. The death dealer loomed closer, its presence a reminder that time, however strangely it moved here, was running out. "Your decision," it intoned. "The sun rises. Choose." Athena looked between the two doorways, one promising safety, normalcy, a return to her quiet life, the other offering uncertainty, sacrifice, but also the chance to save someone who had become more important to her than she'd ever expected. The Death Dealer's shadows lengthened. "Choose now, Athena Rowan, before the first ray of sun breaks over the horizon." "Come," the Death Dealer said, extending a shadowy hand. "There is more you must understand before you choose." Athena hesitated, looking back at Raze's still form beneath the pale tree. "He will remain as he is," the entity assured her. "Time holds no meaning here." Rising shakily to her feet, Athena followed the Death Dealer into the swirling mists. The fog parted like curtains, revealing scenes from the past, memories playing out like living photographs. A young Raze stood beside his father, both working on an old motorcycle. "The curse began with your ancestors' pride," the Death Dealer explained. "A bargain struck in ancient times when a Callahan warrior refused to accept death's natural order." The scene shifted. A teenage Raze watched helplessly as paramedics covered his father's body after a devastating crash. "Generation after generation," the Death Dealer continued, "the price was paid. Only those who receive freely given life force can break the chain." More memories unfurled. Raze joining the Hell Angels, seeking belonging, violent confrontations that left him scarred inside and out, nights spent staring at the ceiling, drowning in guilt. "Stop," Athena whispered, her heart aching. "I've seen enough." "Have you?" The Death Dealer's form rippled. "Do you understand why the Bond chose you?" Athena watched a final memory materialize, herself, performing CPR on that rainy highway, desperate to save a stranger's life without hesitation or expectation of return. "Because I give without counting the cost," she said softly. "Yes." The Death Dealer's voice held something almost like respect. "Such souls are rare." They returned to the pale tree where Raze lay motionless. Athena could feel her strength ebbing now, as if the liminal realm itself was drawing it away. Her legs trembled as she knelt beside him. "Your time grows short," the Death Dealer warned. "The mortal world's dawn approaches. Will you choose freedom or sacrifice?" Athena looked at the two doorways, one bright with promise, one pulsing with uncertainty. Then she gazed down at Raze's face, remembering every moment they'd shared, every small kindness, every flash of hope she'd seen in his eyes. "I choose him," she said simply. Without further hesitation, she pressed her forehead to his chest, right above his heart. She focused on her own heartbeat, willing it to reach out to him like it had that first night. "Please," she thought, "please come back." Warmth bloomed in her chest, different from before. Not a joining, but a giving. She felt her own life force flowing out of her like water, like light, like love itself. A blinding flash erupted around them. The liminal realm shuddered, its misty structures beginning to collapse. Through the overwhelming brightness, Athena glimpsed the Death Dealer inclining its head, not in defeat, but in acknowledgement of her choice. The light grew impossibly brighter. Athena felt herself falling backward, untethered, into consuming darkness. Her last conscious thought was of Raze's heartbeat, hoping she would live long enough to hear it again. As unconsciousness claimed her, she slipped into the void, not knowing if she would ever wake. Consciousness returned to Athena like a gentle tide, washing over her in slow waves. The cabin's wooden floor felt cool against her cheek. Her lungs struggled to draw breath, each inhale shallow and deliberate. "Athena?" Raze's voice trembled nearby. "Please, open your eyes." She managed to lift her heavy eyelids, finding him kneeling beside her. His face was pale but alive. Wonderfully, impossibly alive. His hands shook as they cradled her face. "You shouldn't have done that," he whispered hoarsely. "You could have died." She tried to smile, though even that small movement took effort. "Worth it," she murmured. Distant sirens wailed through the mountain air. Minutes later, boots thundered on the cabin's porch. Emergency responders burst in, summoned by a park ranger who'd reported seeing strange lights flashing from the cabin windows. The paramedics worked quickly, their faces creased with concern as they checked Athena's vitals. Her blood pressure was dangerously low, her pulse weak and thready. They loaded her carefully onto a stretcher while asking Ray's rapid-fire questions he couldn't fully answer. At the hospital, doctors ran test after test, baffled by her condition. They couldn't explain the sudden decline in her vital signs, just as they struggled to understand Ray's apparent recovery from what should have been death. Medical charts showed readings that made no scientific sense. Through it all, Ray's remained constant at her bedside. He dozed in the uncomfortable hospital chair, refused to leave for more than minutes at a time, and watched over her with unwavering attention as strength gradually returned to her body. On the second afternoon, while sunshine streamed through the window, he took her hand gently in his. "The bond is gone," he said quietly. "I can't feel your heartbeat anymore. The curse, it's broken." Athena squeezed his fingers weakly. "Are you sure?" He nodded. "But I'm not going anywhere. What I feel now, it's my choice. No magic, no curse. Just me, choosing to stay if you'll have me." Tears welled in her eyes as she smiled. "I'd like that." 3 days after their ordeal, the doctors finally agreed to discharge her. Ray's helped her sit up, supporting her as she changed out of the hospital gown into real clothes. His touch was careful, protective, but not possessive. They walked slowly through the hospital corridors, Ray's carrying her small overnight bag. When they reached the main entrance, Athena paused in the doorway. Warm afternoon light spilled over them both, and she took a deep breath of fresh air. Looking at each other in the golden sunlight, they shared a quiet moment of understanding. Whatever came next, they would face it together, not bound by ancient magic, but connected by choice and something deeper than curses could touch. Weeks drifted by like gentle clouds, each day bringing a new kind of peace neither Athena nor Ray's had expected to find. The community center buzzed with activity as afternoon sunlight streamed through its wide windows. Kids' voices echoed off the walls, mixing with the metallic sounds of bike repairs and the shuffle of feet on worn linoleum floors. Athena stood before a small group, demonstrating proper bandaging technique. Her voice, once shy and hesitant, now carried clearly through the room. "Remember, keeping pressure on the wound is important," she explained, wrapping a clean bandage around a volunteer's arm. The teenagers watched with genuine interest, some taking notes, others practicing on each other with strips of gauze. In the adjacent workshop, Ray's strong hands moved steadily over bicycle parts. He showed a young boy how to adjust brake cables, his patience evident in every careful explanation. Grease stained his fingers, but his face held a contentment that made him look years younger. The pile of repaired bikes grew steadily, each one destined for a child who couldn't afford their own. "Mr. Ray's," a small voice piped up, "can you teach me how to fix a flat tire?" He smiled, gesturing the boy closer. "Come here. I'll show you step by step." During their lunch break, Athena brought him a sandwich and watched him work. "You're really good with them," she said softly. He shrugged, but his eyes were warm. "They just need someone to believe in them, like you believed in me." The news had come yesterday, a letter from his old motorcycle club. They'd investigated the incidents that had driven him away, discovered the truth, and officially cleared his name. The rogue members who'd hunted him had been dealt with. He was free to live without looking over his shoulder. As evening approached and the last kids headed home, they cleaned up together, moving in comfortable synchronicity. Athena organized the first aid supplies, while Reyes wiped down his tools, their routine as natural as breathing. Outside, the setting sun painted the sky in soft oranges and pinks. They sat on the center's front steps, shoulders touching lightly. The spring air carried the scent of blooming flowers from the small garden they'd helped plant with the kids. Who would have thought, Reyes mused, that this is where we'd end up? Athena smiled, remembering that rainy night on the highway that felt like a lifetime ago. Life has a funny way of leading us where we need to be. He turned to her, his expression tender. "Come here," he said, opening his arms in invitation. Athena shifted closer, letting him guide her head to rest against his chest. She closed her eyes, listening. One steady heartbeat pulsed beneath her ear, just his, strong and sure. Her own heart beat in answer, a separate but harmonious rhythm. There was no supernatural bond now, no curse-driven connection forcing them together. Just two people who had chosen each other, who had fought through darkness and emerged stronger. Their link had transformed into something real and lasting, built on trust, strengthened by shared purpose, and sustained by genuine love. They sat together as the last rays of sunlight painted the world in gold, two hearts beating to their own free rhythms, yet perfectly in tune. Thank you for listening. Stories connect us in the most unexpected ways. If you felt that spark today, make sure you're subscribed. I share a new one daily, and the next might change your day.